Now let's stay with these developments around the SAPS and look at what this instability within the police service is doing to its crime-fighting efforts. Let's speak now to senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Dr. Johan Burger. Dr. Burger, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Good afternoon to you. When you look at these developments within the SAPS, we've been talking about quite a lot that has been going on for a number of years right now. But just, the developments today, looking at the fact that IPID, took that decision to charge the police commissioner, it's been a long time coming, isn't it?
Yes, good evening. Yes, it's absolutely true. It's been coming a long time. We know that in 2012 already, the National Development Plan referred to the serial crisis of police management. So this is an ongoing struggle. We've had 8 commissions, 4 permanent appointments, 4 acting national commissioners since 2000. And we know what happened to most of them, but none of them, not one single one of them, completed their 5-year contract. And all of them were either removed because of criminal investigations, criminal charges, or because of findings by a commission of inquiry, or for whatever other reason. So this causes instability, obviously, in terms of the police leadership. What is worrying is this just touches on the position of the National Commissioner. It does not include similar problems below that level. The deputies, we know Deputy National Commissioner General Buma is also implicated in the court judgment last year about attempts to derail the IPID, or at least not cooperating with the IPID investigation then. So there's this ongoing internal battles between the generals themselves. There's this unsatisfying situation between the National Commissioner and Lieutenant General Jacobs, who was head of crime intelligence. So yes, absolutely correct. This is an ongoing struggle to maintain consistency in the top leadership of the police.
Now, Dr. Burger, one of the things that has really become clear is that the difficulty is really becoming in the work of the SAPS on the ground as well, because these are not only fights that are on the upper echelons, but they're also impacting the fight against crime on the ground, etc. When you look at what has happened, especially around the police commissioner this afternoon, and even during the course of the months, especially after Khehla was killed, there were some serious questions that were raised about the circumstances surrounding his murder, especially because it appears that he was left vulnerable and exposed by the SAPS, knowing at the time that his life was in danger. This is but one of some of what we are seeing as some of the shortcomings when it comes to the SAPS. No doubt these fights are impacting the work at station level.
Yes, I mean, without any doubt. What happens at the top leadership level of the police filters down to grassroots level. Younger policemen, more junior policemen also watches the news, reads the medias, they see what's going on social media. So they cannot remain unaffected by these problems. There's something about legitimacy as far as police leaders are concerned. And one of the things about legitimacy is that a leader in the police service should enjoy legitimacy, not just as far as the public is concerned, but also legitimacy within his or her own organization. Now, clearly, the National Commissioner currently, given all the accusations against him, the findings of the High Court, now IPID and its struggle to get the National Commissioner to work with them in terms of their investigation. All of these things work towards breaking down any measure of trust and confidence that both the President, the Minister, but also the public can have in the National Commissioner. So my own feeling is that his legitimacy as National Commissioner amongst members of his own organization as well as the public has been seriously damaged and to the extent that I cannot believe that he can still remain in that position.
And just at the back of that, I mean, you alluded to that case around the grabber that was in the High Court, and we know what happened because that looked like it was a serious waste of money, and we still don't even know what that device was actually meant to do, because even the court saying that it looked like they put party interests versus the work of the SAPS. And what you're talking about right now, when we're looking at what IPID has done, the president has been talking about the possibility of an inquiry into his fitness to hold office. And this is, of course, at the back of what we saw in July with the riots, because he was also missing in action, if I can even say. Do you think it's time that he faces an inquiry into his fitness to hold office?
Yes, I think this is extremely important. I think we are all just a little worried by the fact that the president seems to not to be acting, given the fact that he's already served a letter of intention to suspend on the National Commissioner, which gives him an opportunity to respond, but nothing happened. And now we have these serious charges against him. So I think, if there's any good time to take action, it is now. And also, as you said, keeping in mind that suspension is not a finding of guilt. It's not a finding of whether a person is fit for office. A suspension is only a ruling to temporarily remove someone from office to allow proper legal processes, such as with a board of inquiry, which will be chaired by a judge. And it is the responsibility of that board of inquiry then to find whether this National Commissioner is still fit for office and to make the suitable recommendations to the President.
Dr. Burger, looking at the challenges that the country is facing, especially when in its crime-fighting efforts, there's also talk about the NPA being overwhelmed when it comes to cases of corruption, and now we're also seeing the stealing of firearms in various police stations. I mean, some 158 firearms being stolen at a Norwood police station. It's really not an isolated incident, because we're seeing this around the country. I wonder, what do you make of the debate that is now in the public domain to say that police do need help, and some saying that the Hawks are simply not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and the possibility it should be that the Scorpions need to be brought back? I wonder, what are your thoughts on that?
So I'm not convinced that, the establishing of another Scorpions unit is necessarily the answer. It will still not solve all the problems that the police are confronted with, and that includes the Hawks. Keeping in mind that the Hawks was sort of compromised after the criticism when the Scorpions were disbanded. Then they appointed the Hawks, I think because there was a belief that it would be easier to control the Hawks than it would be the Scorpions. So whether they will allow any such attempt again, I don't know, but that is not to me the important thing. I think the important issue now is the questions we need to ask the minister in particular, and also perhaps the National Commissioner, but I doubt we'd get a good response from him at this time, is we sit with the National Development Plan, which was approved by government and parliament in 2012, with a few very practical recommendations about how the crisis in the police service. Remember, it's not just a crisis of leadership. That is there, certainly most obvious. But the whole police service is currently in crisis. And how this can be, at least a process to address this, how this can be done. We, from the institutes, are currently looking at practical, achievable recommendations that we want to forward. We'll see how we will do that, perhaps through the Portfolio Committee in Parliament, about police reform, because we believe urgent and drastic reform of the police service is urgent, it's necessary, it must happen now. And that includes the process of appointing the top leadership of the police service. It includes a process of assessing police officers generally to ascertain to what extent are they suitable for the positions that they occupy. So there are a number of recommendations there that we hope we can take further in terms of the parliamentary processes.
And Dr. Burger, I mean, when one looks at this Vision 2030 that the NDP really puts forward, it not only talks about the demilitarization of police, but it says that people living in South Africa by 2030 should feel safe and have no fear of crime. Women and children, as well as vulnerable groups, should feel protected. They should have confidence in the criminal justice system to effectively apprehend and prosecute criminals who violate individuals as well as community safety. You know, when you read this and read some of the recommendations and looking at the fact that it says the SAPS as well as Metro Police should be professional institutions who have staffed by skilled, disciplined, ethical individuals who value their work and serve their community. Listening to what we've been talking about this afternoon, this is all likely to remain a pipe dream if nothing is done as a matter of urgency, because this was the blueprint that the country was supposed to be using to chart a way forward.
Yes, absolutely right. We talk about crime, you know, the interesting thing is that the situation is becoming worse. We should not be deluded by the reductions we saw last year when we had the high level of measures that kept everybody off the streets and in-house and so on. So, you know, so during that time we had a dramatic decrease in most of our crime levels. But as soon as those levels were eased out, we saw a return to previous crime levels, in some places even worse. Now, if you remember that just before the lockdowns happened in 2020, our murder rate went up by 37% since 2012, year on year. And our aggravated robbery levels went up 43%, and that includes house robberies, business robberies, carjackings, and so on. So all in all, our crime situation is dramatically becoming worse. Now, against all of this, we have a police service and, as you referred to, looking also at the problems within the Hawks and the prosecuting authority, which incidentally means you cannot just fix the police, you have to fix all the other institutions of the criminal justice system. But if we do not start these processes of fixing the stuff that we all know exists, they are highlighted in all the official reports, officially adopted and approved. They are there. The big question is, why do we not implement those recommendations? And unless and until we do this, the situation will increasingly become worse. And it's from our side really an urgent call to government, an urgent call to the president to start taking these issues seriously and appoint well, you know, the number of structures that can be appointed to start the implementation process. But what we need to do now is start to implement. The things that need to be done are known. It just needs to be done.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Burger, for your time. We'll look forward to those recommendations that you'll put together, and would like to see exactly how this is going to be achieved, especially because we're inching closer, very closely, to 2030. That was a senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Dr. Johan Burger.